Hi guys, so here we are again. This tutorial we will be continuing with our attendance tracker. So last video I told you guys to do some little homework and to make drop-down lists for your applications instead of the text field box. So hopefully we all got that. So now it's pretty cool. It's gonna put a date, and Bill came, Joe came, and Nancy was late. Go ahead and submit that, and successful execution. Now if I go back into the database under the table attendance tracker, scroll down here, and yep, there they are. Student ID, status, and date. So we're good to go, and we got that working. So now what we're going to be doing is, so right now notice that there's only 3 students, but what if I had like 10 students? Then 10 students would show, but remember in the code that I manually did an insert for the first one in the index, and then a second one, and then a third one, right? I didn't put this into a loop. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to condense this because a class size isn't static, it needs to be dynamic. So we're going to change this way of being static code into a more dynamic code. We're going to have a loop. We're going to check how many students were inside here, because right here we're actually looping through each of the students that the database, whatever the database has for us. So that way, no matter how many students that we have, we'll be always able to track their attendance. But here, we can't always code this way. So we're going to be learning about some loops. We're going to be fixing this code up and learning about some loops. So where to start? Let's type in W3 PHP loops. Let's be more specific. Let's do loops with an array. So here's PHP for loops, and here is PHP arrays. Let's check out what the arrays has. So there's actually different types of arrays. There's like regular indexed arrays, and there's associative arrays. We're very familiar with this indexed array type. See, PHP indexed array, you just have a variable, you define an array, and you put values into them. Or you say at position 0 it's this, at position 1 it's this, position 2 it's this. So there's different ways to use and define an index array. So here's getting the count. Looping through an index array, it's definitely what we need. And here are associative arrays. See, associative arrays are arrays that they use name keys, and then you assign them the values. So like this one, this is the age of Peter is 35. The age of Ben is 37. So we're not using any indexes, like they're using associative arrays. So what is associated to the value that's in here? And it's the name of Peter. Over here, scrolling up, we are using index arrays. Now, how do we know that our code here for the attendance tracker is using index arrays? Because inside our addAttendance.php, we are defining indexes. 0, 1, and 2. So So whatever we're sending here inside our form, the status or the student ID, we are sending an index array back to this addAttendance.php. Alright, does that make sense? So we'll be using index arrays in this example. And real quickly, here is updated code and just pasted in the select statement here. Originally was up here, put it in there, but yep. Alright, so let's practice with arrays. I'm going to create a new PHP file and I'm just gonna call it arrays since practice is already filled up. I'm gonna close my PHP delimiters and save. So let's go to W3 and let's follow along with some examples. So this is an example using PHP. Here is an array. Here is an array of cars. And this, we're just looking at this right now because this is the actual array. Here is an array which has some names of things, which when we're looking at it, it's cars. So it has 1, 2, 3. It has three entities inside this array. And what are we calling and what are we using to access this array? We created a variable called cars. So cars equals this array. And then here is an echo statement. Echo, I like, here's a space, I like car at index 0, which is Volvo, comma, space, cars at index 1, BMW, and cars at index 2, period. So if we run this example, that is what we get. So index arrays, really simple. So we're very familiar with accessing the index of an array like this, but in class we never, I don't think we all use the loop method. So you guys all took programming before and you all know that for loops, you want to access each of the array, you're going to need to like have some sort of counter to loop through them. And here is to get the length of the array is just this count function with open parentheses, and you stuff in the variable of the array in which you're associating it to, and you get the count. Now here, this is what we need, loop through in an index array. So here we have our array and we're making it equal to cars. Here we're getting the length of this array, cars, getting the length of this array. And here is where the magic happens. It's using a for loop to go through each of the array. So it's gonna first start out at 0 and x is 0, and as long as x is less than the length of the array, then we're gonna continue. And then cars is currently 0, and it will echo the first one. And since it passed, then now x is 1. It goes up and goes up and goes down and checks, and then it's going to eventually stop. Has a nice breakpoint right here, and we're good to go. Alright, so if the way I'm explaining to it doesn't make sense, it's probably because you're probably your first time looking at an array, which I hope not, because you guys should have done your homework and already gone through this already, PHP arrays. So anyways, I'm just gonna copy and paste this code because it's a really good simple code that we need. And I'm gonna go to my array.php, paste over it, source format. Did I get anything? Oh, I guess it's already pretty nice. And I am going to run this. I'm not gonna right click and run it. I'm just gonna go ahead and just type it. and there I get. It just prints the array, has a breakpoint 3 times. So, how can we use this template and add it into our attendance tracker? Well, problem solving technique. You have to find what is being repeated and then replace it basically with the for loop. So if I didn't have this for loop, which I'm going to put all the way down here, and I know that there's three entries inside this array, so what am I gonna do? I'm gonna just manually say echo cars position 0, echo cars position 1, bear with me, echo cars at position 2, and I'm gonna have a breakpoint there and there, right? So this is me manually doing it, right? Accessing it, and if I print it, or not print it, if I run it, it prints out the exact same information, and it's not completely beautiful because I forgot that breakpoint right there. So if I go back, refresh, then it prints out basically the same thing. But if I add another variable to this, like Ford, then we're going to see a difference. I'm going to add another breakpoint so that we can see it more clearly. Right? So this one is manual, and this one is automatic because it's using the for loop. For loop is finding the size of the array and then looping through each and every one. So, see, manual way, it's like, it's broken. It's not going to work all the time. Automatic way, it should work all the time and print all the data. Now, in my attendance tracker, I might have more than one student, right? Like, but in my current code, it's very static and manual. So I'm not going to be able to like get the attendance record for a student that comes into my class. So for example, if I go here, back to phpMyAdmin, and go to my attendance database and go to my students table, if I add another student, then my code that I currently have is going to break. So if I add another student, which is myself, now there's 4 students. And if I refresh the home page, now I have 4 students. So I have a problem right now. So my code only keeps track of the first 3 students at position 0, 1, and 2. It's not gonna know the position, the 3rd student. I mean, I could go back here and remember where my pattern was, which is probably right here, you know, and do a whole copy and paste and keep doing it manually. But no, that's not how we do things. That's how things get complicated for the programmer, for the software developer. So what we do instead, we want to find the pattern, where are we making the pattern, and put it in a loop, because things are supposed to be automatic, you know, it's a computer. So here, this is our code. Let's start from the top. It's in a try statement because it's gonna catch whatever error happens within that try statement, and it's gonna tell us that an error occurred. So here, database variables. Does this need to go in a for loop? No, it doesn't. because we're not repeating it anywhere else here in the code. It's just staying up here where it needs to be. How about this connection? Is it being repeated anywhere else in the code? No, it's not. So the pattern is not there. How about this one? This set attribute, turning on the errors. No, it's not repeated anywhere, so it's not in our loop. How about this statement connection, this prepare statement? Is it being repeated anywhere else in the code? Yes, it's right there, and it's right there. It's doing it 3 times. And how about the bind values we want into the query? It's happening there. 1, 2, 3, 3 lines. 1, 2, 3, 3 lines. So yep, that's definitely gonna go inside our for loop because that's the pattern. And then here, let's execute. Yep, it's right here. And it's right here. So we found the pattern, guys. So this is the pattern. It looks exactly like this. I can't highlight twice, but it looks like this. So this is the last one. It's taking the last index in the array if there was a size 3. Now it's not. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. And the next pattern is this one. Delete. And now we're just cleaning up here. Now we're just left with 1. There's no other pattern. So this right here, this prepare statement, this is our pattern. Pattern starts. Pattern ends. So this is what needs to go inside our loop. All right. Let's go back to our arrays. So here, this is what gets repeated. So the thing that we just highlighted goes in our loop. So this needs to get repeated, needs to go right inside here. So we know what to do with this for loop. But how about these things up here at the top? Do we have any reference variables? Do we have an array length count so that it knows to count? So I'm going to get rid of this because we don't need that anymore because we have a for loop. Anyways, do we have an array length count up here? Anywhere up here? No, we don't. We don't, right? So let's go ahead and copy this. Copy. And let's paste it all the way at the top here. Why we're pasting it up here? Because remember, this is add attendance.php, and in our index, inside our form, it's going here, so it's going to send all the values to this PHP page. So instead of this, Volvo, BMW, Toyota, Ford, this is an array, right? So we need the value, or we need the object of the array that's being sent to us here inside our add attendance. And what is that? There's a few arrays. There's 2 arrays. We're sending in a student ID, and we're sending in a status array. So 2 arrays. Oops. So 2 arrays, and here, if we go back to where our pattern starts, we notice this is the array that we want, student ID. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna make a reference copy of this student ID. Not the 0, don't grab the 0. I want the array. So this is actually the array. So this is the array, student ID. And instead of calling it cars, I'm gonna call it student ID, right? Good. So what's our next array? Well, it's student status, right? Student status. Let's go back down to our pattern. Let's copy and paste this array, and we'll put it here. So here, student ID array. Since we're gonna actually write that it's an array, so we don't forget. So whoever goes back to this code and just looks at this page first, they're gonna know that we're expecting an array. Alright, so these are our two arrays, and here is the length. Now, should we leave cars there? Cars is nowhere to be referenced, so we're just gonna use student ID array. You can use either one. You can use student status array or student ID array, but we know that it's gonna be the same size. We know it's going to be the same size because inside our index.php we're basically looping, and wherever this gets created will also get created here, so we know it's going to be the same size. So we got basically this going on at the top here. So we got that. So now we need the for loop. We're going to copy this for loop and we're going to paste it inside our add attendance right next to our pattern. Pattern starts here, so I'm going to make some room, paste it in here. And here is the old code, so I'm going to delete that. And when I pasted things over, got a little disformatted. So here, this is where my pattern, where I want my pattern to go inside this for loop. So here, I gotta go back down to where my pattern starts, highlight until where your pattern ends, and do a cut, and do a paste. Go ahead and format your code. Delete extra white lines, and we're good to go. So now it's in a for loop. Pattern starts here, pattern ends. It's going to keep looping and looping. But there's one more thing that we need to do. Do we need to reference it like this? No, we don't. Because remember, inside here, this is saying X. So cars at position, starting at 0, at position 0, will return Volvo. Car, if X was 1, then this would be cars 1. If X was 2, then it would be car 2, right? So we're kind of missing, we're kind of missing this here, defining the index. In our add attendance, we have X here, but here we don't have it. So now we gotta go back up to our array, student ID array. It's called student ID array. Student ID array. And it's not at position 0, it's at position X. So same for status. It's going to be student status array at position X, and whatever X is at the time. Now we're going to leave date the way it is because date only has one variable and it's not an array at all. So now we have it in a loop. So it's going to insert, it's going to do its first insert with the student at position 0, and then it's going to bind all the variables, the student ID array at position 0, which is going to be the ID of the student, and then the student status array at position 0, which is if it's present, no show, late, or other. At position 0, it's going to bind the parameters into these right here. So remember the colon and the name, it's this, whatever the value is in here, it's going to replace what's in there, and it's going to put it inside the insert statement. And then it's going to execute and run, and if nothing bad happens, it's going to say successful execution. Alright, good to go. We got an array count, not array count, array length, which is doing a count. Inside this for loop, it's going to loop this many times. It's going to do the insert so many times with the length, and it's going to execute and go to the database. So now, let's go back here, and I'm going to go to phpMyAdmin and go to my students. And here, I have 4 students, right? 4 students. Now in my attendance tracker, I already have data. And what I want to do, so that's easier to see that everything worked, I want to clear everything on this data. So I'm going to check it all. You can either check it all, or you can find the SQL statement that basically clears the whole database. Not the whole database, clears the whole table. Since we're in phpMyAdmin, I'm just going to manually delete it. And see, it does a delete for each row. And it's asking me, do I really want to execute the following query? Because it's a delete. Usually when you do deletes inside software development, you always want to prompt the user one more time before they make a mistake. And I am sure. And MySQL will return empty set of results because now inside my browse, it's empty. Just quickly, I'm gonna Google how to clear the table in MySQL. Delete all records in a table of MySQL in phpMyAdmin. Empty. I could have just hit empty. Truncate. You have 2 options. You can say delete from my table. That's the SQL statement, or you can say truncate my table. So I could have written truncate attendance tracker inside here. Unrecognized statement, come on. Let's see how that goes. Yeah, it's fine, it worked. So I could have done that. So, okay, anyways, back to the application. Refresh the page, and so I just cleared out all of the records in my attendance tracker table, and now I'm starting again, I'm starting new. Let's go back to the beginning of the year, and Bill was late, everyone else was present. I got a successful execution. Go back to phpMyAdmin, and there, I got my 4 students. So now it's not only doing 3 students at a time, it's doing 4 students. Alright, what if I have another student who registered late? Can't think of a name. Mike. Gonna hit go. Now I have 5 students that I need to take attendance of, but they didn't come to the first day of class, so I still have 4 students. Go back, refresh the page. Now I have Mike. And the next day, Mike is present. Bill was late. Everyone else is present. Present. Successful execution. Now I have data for the student ID 5 that I didn't have before. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. That's all I got for now. Until next time.